Hey guys, what's up? My name is Megan and I am from Seattle, Washington, and I'm 33 years old. And I just wanted to make a video and share a little bit about my mental health journey. I have been officially diagnosed with bipolar type 1 disorder with psychotic features as well as PTSD. And this diagnosis didn't come until I was about 30 years old. I got diagnosed later in life than most people, but that's just a part of my journey. So my story kind of begins, I met my husband when I was 23 years old. And shortly after I met him, I decided to open my own hair salon business. And I ran that successfully for about 6 years. I was really busy. We had just gotten married. Seemingly on paper, I had it all. I drove a brand new car, had a successful business, had a husband. We had hopes and plans to start a family. And I would say things really started kind of unraveling for me around the time that we started trying to get pregnant. And it was challenging. You don't know what your fertility is going to be like until you either get pregnant or try to start getting pregnant. And it wasn't easy for me. And so I made the choice. You can look at it as a choice or a mistake or whatever, but I was very open with my hair clientele that my husband and I were trying to start a family, and I was open about that because I didn't think it would be such a struggle. And so I would say my depression really started to set in once us getting pregnant wasn't working out. Um, you know, for most people that have struggled with infertility, it's very hard on your marriage because you don't know like whose fault it is when it's really not anyone's fault, but you start to kind of, you don't understand why things aren't working out and people are asking you, so when are you going to start trying to have a family? And when you are trying, it's really hard to come forward and say like, we're really struggling actually. So I would just kind of stuff my feelings down and pretend like it didn't bother me, but it really did. And every day I would go to work, and some days I would be on the verge of tears all day, and listening to other women talk about their kids and their pregnancy was very, very challenging for me. And it's not like I wasn't happy for other people, but it's really tough when you're struggling to hear about other people's, happiness with their pregnancy and their baby showers and all that kind of good stuff. And so, things started to get really bad. And a way that I started dealing with the stress of not being able to get pregnant is I really started abusing alcohol. I would have all these feelings all day at work, and I would become so overwhelmed and so stressed, and I would keep myself so busy at the salon that when I would get off work, I would just want to numb and self-medicate myself so I wouldn't feel all the emotions of talking to people all day and all the sadness and pain I was feeling inside. So I began drinking pretty heavily, but I was quiet about it. I didn't really, people didn't really know how much I was drinking. Like my husband would go to bed, and some nights I would drink 2 bottles of wine, and so that kind of went on for a while. And then in the summer of 2016, everything changed. Right around the end of June 2016, early July, I really started struggling sleeping. And when I say I struggled with sleeping, like I don't mean I had a couple of rough nights. Like I completely stopped sleeping, and I tried everything. I tried any remedy over the counter that you could imagine. That didn't work. I was encouraged by family and friends to go see a psychiatrist or whatever to possibly get on antidepressants, but I was very ashamed and felt like at the time that made me weak, and I didn't want to go that route. And so I was just very resistant, but things started to spiral. I lost about 25 pounds. My hair was falling out. I was severely depressed. the depression just kept getting worse and worse, and I started having suicidal thoughts, which really scared me because I had never dealt with anything like that. And the thoughts were just reoccurring and they wouldn't go away. They wouldn't shut off no matter how hard I tried to think about how blessed I am. The suicidal thoughts kept coming and coming. And so basically, on September 7th of 2016, I made a plan to end my life. And thank God, that didn't work out, but I did have to go to a psych facility for a few nights, and that was like the scariest experience of my life, because when I went to the hospital to tell them what had happened, they promised me that going to this psych facility was going to help me, and it was going to be a healing atmosphere, and it wasn't. In fact, I was sexually hit on by male nurses that worked in the facility, which obviously made me extremely uncomfortable and feel powerless. And so after I got released, I vowed that I wasn't going to ever let anybody know outside of my immediate family that I had been a patient at a psych facility, because I was so ashamed and so embarrassed. I tried to just pretend like the whole thing never happened and continue working. And every day my hair clients were, so concerned with me and asking me what is wrong, why have I lost so much weight? I didn't know what to say to anybody. I just kept isolating and being withdrawn. I went from being bubbly and happy to I could barely even form sentences because I was so sleep deprived. And so eventually I had to take a leave of absence from work because I couldn't go on any longer. So I gave my mom my business phone, and I kind of just took like 6 weeks off. And I finally agreed to see a psychiatrist, and she prescribed me an antidepressant because she diagnosed me with depression, and it was actually a misdiagnosis because, as I stated earlier, I actually do have bipolar disorder. And so although I really didn't want to take antidepressants, I was so desperate to feel normal again that I agreed to take them. And about 6 to 8 weeks after I started taking them, they started working. And that was around January of 2017 is when they started to, kick in, and I started to feel better. And it was like such a relief to my husband and my family and friends to just see me, finally feeling better. And I thought that, okay, wow, that was the solution. That's what I needed. But unfortunately, like I said, I was misdiagnosed with depression, and I actually have bipolar disorder. So this medication that the psychiatrist put me on, it's scientifically known that if you do have bipolar disorder, that this medication can flip you into a manic episode. And I didn't know what a manic episode was. My family didn't know what a manic episode was, and my behavior like drastically changed. And I went from being the Megan that everyone knew to I was a completely different person. I started dressing strangely. I started dabbling in drugs, and then really getting into drugs, cocaine specifically. I would stay up all night. I previously was an athlete and didn't smoke cigarettes. I started smoking cigarettes. I would call people all day, every day. I would talk very fast. I didn't have a filter. I would say things with no filter that would really upset people. It was just basically a disaster, and no one around me knew how to handle it. And, everyone agrees now it wasn't handled properly. People were very aggressive with me about my behavior and very accusatory, like, what's wrong with you? Like, why the hell are you acting this way? And in my head, I thought that everything was fine. When you're manic and you have bipolar disorder, you feel fine. You feel happy as ever. And so it's very confusing when you feel so euphoric and happy, and everyone around you is angry at you and threatening you, and I don't want to be your friend anymore if you don't stop doing this or that. And so that was just a very challenging time for me. And the more stress of getting in arguments with family and friends, and them not understanding why I'm acting that way, and me not understanding what I'm doing wrong, it kept escalating and escalating till eventually I asked my husband for a divorce and I ran away from home. I was living on the streets. I made friends with a group of homeless people. I got into even worse drugs. I started doing meth, and I was basically living at the casino. I withdrew thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars out of my bank account, money that I worked my ass off to build. Like I mentioned, I had my own hair salon business and I never took out loans or anything to start my business. I, got a side job in the beginning to supplement my income and just built myself from the ground up. And so just basically blew through all my money, which was extremely devastating. But basically in April of 2017, I was arrested 3 times for nonviolent crimes, and I was hospitalized twice, all in 1 month. And prior to when things started getting bad in 2016 with not sleeping, I've never been arrested. I've never been in trouble with the law. I've never been hospitalized. I've never been unhealthy. Physically, at least. I mean, now that I know that I have bipolar disorder and I look back on my life, like I can see that I've had these highs and lows for a very long time. I probably originally started showing signs when I was in my early 20s, but basically April of 2017 was like the lowest point of my life. And in that month, I experienced police brutality, and police were very aggressive and physically abusive with me, as well as corrections officers in jail. I was so confused and didn't understand why I was being arrested, and turns out I have a mental illness, and that was the thing that was going on. And once my family and friends knew what had happened to me, most of them supported me. I did lose a lot of friends and a lot of people that I thought were true people in my life, but that's been okay and a blessing in disguise, because it's made room for me knowing who my tribe is and the people that literally will never leave my side. And so basically my husband and I got back together, and we tried to put our life back together. But then again, after everything happened, I had so much trauma from going through everything I went through to get diagnosed with bipolar, that I started abusing alcohol again. And in the spring of 2018, with my family's unconditional support, I went to Pennsylvania to a dual diagnosis treatment facility for 70 days. And I did intensive therapy, one-on-one, and also group therapy. And I was able to finally receive the help I've so desperately needed for so long. And that was in the spring of 2018. I left June 7th, 2018. So it is June 11th today, I believe, 2020, and I now have 2 years sober. I am happily married. I'm actually expecting my first child. My husband and I are pregnant, and I'm having my first baby in December of 2020. I'm 14 weeks pregnant right now, and I have a happy ending. I live well with a mental illness. I now advocate. I'm open and honest about my experiences, and I found that the biggest key for me with getting my life back on track was learning not to be ashamed and embarrassed of who I am. And once I started owning my story and owning my truth and openly saying I have bipolar disorder and I'm not ashamed, that's when my life changed for the better. And so any advice I can give to anyone out there struggling is to not be embarrassed or ashamed, but just to embrace yourself and love yourself and show yourself compassion. Find your tribe, find people that love you and care about you unconditionally. And I highly also recommend getting involved in advocacy. I'm on the NAMI Washington Snohomish County Board, and I love doing that. So anyways, thank you for watching this video, and I hope that I can give inspiration to anyone out there struggling that you can turn things around and that light can come out of the darkness.